Good morning on this Sunday, April 12th, and a happy Easter. Welcome to the Georgia Gang from a temporary studio here at Fox 5. Stay home. Governor Brian Kemp extends his shelter-in-place order until April 30th. Georgia's primary is delayed yet again until June. And according to an AJC report, Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard is supplementing his salary with tens of thousands of dollars from a nonprofit that he is CEO of. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are all keeping a safe distance, joining us from their homes. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
By order of the governor, Georgians must now shelter in place until April 30th. Considering the increase in the number of coronavirus cases and deaths, the announcement did not come as a surprise.
COVID-19 is hitting our state hard. I want to ask for your continued patience and your prayers, because we are all in this fight together.
Governor Brian Kemp urged Georgians to be patient and vigilant in the fight against the spread of COVID-19. As the death toll and the numbers of cases continue to rise, the governor has faced mounting criticism to do more. This week, he extended the state's shelter-in-place order through the end of this month and put new restrictions on nursing homes. Still, some in North Georgia pushed for the closure of state parks, while others along the coast pleaded with the governor to close beaches. The governor, though, said law enforcement would break up large gatherings, and if things got out of control, he would look at more drastic steps.
But we will continue to use data, science, and the advice of our healthcare officials to guide our steps toward a safer, healthier, and more prosperous future in our state.
Governor Kemp said what Georgians are doing is working, but we still have a long way to go. So, Theron, let's start with you. We're still looking for that light at the end of the tunnel, but the most recent models show Georgia could reach peak hospital capacity about April 22nd. What do you think?
Well, I think the governor definitely did the right thing by extending the shelter in place to mid-May. I really think he had no choice. But we also heard from him an extreme amount of caution, sort of preparing us that we're about to see people being affected by this virus and deaths at an all-time high. And so, we all got to listen to the governor, listen to the mayors, the county officials when they say we need to truly, truly shelter in place, because we're doing everything we can to try to flatten this curve.
So the shelter in place is until the end of April. The emergency declaration is until mid-May. So, Phil, is there any more that the governor could be doing?
Well, I think he's taking a balanced approach. Aside from what we've just talked about, he's also banned these vacation rentals through April 30th. And a reminder to everybody, it's a criminal misdemeanor to violate these emergency declarations and executive orders. I think, and I know we'll probably talk about it in a minute, he got in trouble for opening the beaches, and maybe his chief of staff shouldn't have gone to Facebook and said, hey, Georgia, come on to our beaches. I think it should be a more measured approach. But no, I think things so far so good. I would remind viewers a bright spot, even though it is a tough month in terms of testing positive and deaths. I saw where 97% of those who have tested positive eventually recover.
That's good news indeed. And Janelle, let's talk about the beaches on Georgia's coast. They'd already been closed, but the governor's order reversed those local decisions. And really, he took a lot of criticism for that. Do you agree with his decision to reopen the beaches?
Well, you know what? I think we have to keep the main thing, which is that the guideline says that you're not to congregate with 10 or more people. It doesn't say you can't go outside, you can't enjoy the weather. And I think about people who live on the beaches. And let's keep in mind, too, that the state troopers will be monitoring all of these areas, but particularly the beaches, from aerial as well as on foot, to make sure that the guidelines are in place. Here's the thing, even when it comes to public parks and the Beltline and things of that nature, I don't think it's anything wrong with us getting out and getting exercise, especially the African-American community who's being impacted due to pre-existing conditions. I do think that we need to, of course, push for exercising and things of that nature and getting out of the house. But as long as you're following the guidelines, then you should be fine. I don't think it's a matter of, whether or not it's closed or open. I think it's a matter of us being an adult and following the guidelines that are put in front of us.
Kathy, let's get your opinion on that. The mayor of Tybee Island, she had some really harsh words for Governor Kemp and was pleading for folks to stay away from the beaches. It seemed as though people were not venturing out, and if they were at least 6 feet apart. So to Janelle's point, it's about social and I guess your own personal responsibility.
Well, of course it is, and everybody needs to contribute. Unfortunately, there are people who don't, and those tend to be the people who are engaging in risky behavior in lots of other ways, and they're contributing to the continuation of this virus. So, I personally think you should have not gotten ahead of the local officials who were trying to manage situations that were very, very difficult. I think deploying law enforcement to patrol beaches is probably not the best use of that capability. And I will say I really wish that the governor had gone ahead and extended the shelter in place to the end of his emergency powers. There's absolutely no way we're going to return to normalcy a week after our peak, our peak disaster, however you want to call it, and people need kind of some future thinking about how they're going to be making plans. There's no sense in leading people to believe that we're going to be moving around back to normal at the end of April.
Phil, weigh in on that. As much as we hate to hear that, is that realistic? And lawmakers also have to pass a budget. They have until June 30th. And how realistic? How is that actually going to happen? Are we going to see some type of virtual voting?
Well, 2 points. I would respond to Kathy first by saying, obviously, Atlanta is a hot spot for the virus, and of course, Albany. But you've got a lot of areas of the state where you have few, if any, people testing positive. So I think you can have a measured reopening. Remember, we have to think about not only public health, of course, but we have to think about the hundreds of thousands of Georgians that have lost or are losing their jobs, and we have to reopen parts of the economy and even keep parts, thankfully, open. And of course, thankfully, federal aid is coming in already. I talked to a doctor just this morning who looked at his bank account and direct deposit. He got his federal grant to keep his business open. And of course, there's the PPP. But secondly, to your point, Lori, I think it is really important we do a supplemental budget for this state. You can't write checks for money you don't have. And so I think we're going to have to look at a virtual legislature. I think that even though this emergency order is in place, perhaps they could have one day quickly pass a supplemental budget and then do sine die and adjourn.
Theron, I want to switch gears because Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms ordered the city to spend $1.5 million to test, transport, and house the homeless who test positive, of course, for the virus, and they'll be housed. This is a really tough issue when you're dealing with the homeless population. What do you think about, what she has done in this situation?
I'm so happy that she did that. $1.5 million to really focus on some of the most vulnerable people that are susceptible to this virus. And also what she did, Lori, is that she went a step further in really putting together some stronger protocols at the world's busiest airport. We saw the images of the homeless citizens going to the airport, and so it's sort of a very passionate, measured, but very stern approach to trying to decrease the amount of homeless citizens who are going to the airport, but to really put this money directly in treating those people who have contracted this virus, and also to give them education to make sure that they're living as healthy lives as they possibly can. That just showed the level of leadership and the compassion from this mayor.
All right, well, coming up, Georgia voters will now have to wait yet again to cast ballots in the upcoming primary. We'll talk about that coming up.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
June 9th, that's when voters will be able to head to the polls in Georgia's primary. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger made the decision to delay the primary for 3 weeks, citing safety concerns for poll workers and voters. Janelle and Kathy, I want you to weigh in on this first. Some Republicans are criticizing the Secretary of State for waiting so long to make this call. Janelle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it was a long wait, but I want to take my opportunity to encourage young people to get involved when it comes to poll working. I think that we have to, my hat goes off to all of the those who are elderly, who has gotten out there time after time and done this and supported these elections. But this is time to pass the torch and allow the young people to come on and step up. And young people have to step up. I mean, if we had younger people working the polls, I don't think it would have been that much of an issue, because we do have to protect our older citizens as of right now. But and so I really want to press that issue. And then it's a paid opportunity. So if you are unemployed, this is an opportunity to make some money on the side while you are going through this. But most importantly, we've got to push for younger poll workers.
Kathy, it was becoming evident that there was just no way the counties were going to be able to hire poll workers, and that still may be an issue come June 9th.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we really need to start looking at a vote by mail option where we're pushing people as much as possible into voting by mail, so that we're reducing the contact at that point. And frankly, it is going to be difficult. And don't envy the Secretary of State and the decisions that he has to make. But one of the decisions he can make is making sure that people have postage for their absentee ballots. I know my mom is an active voter. She votes every single time, and she's in a senior apartment complex and can't leave. Now, I'm going to be, sticking some postage stamps under her, but that's not the case. Can order them online. Not everyone has access to a credit card. Not everybody has access to a computer. And we want to help people be able to cast their votes, especially right now.
Phil, there was a federal lawsuit filed claiming that the stamp used in these mail-in ballots amounted to a poll tax. Do you think this lawsuit has merit?
No, I don't. I think, again, politics are entering in. The liberals and the Democrats, of course, have always loved mail-in ballots. Now, I don't have a problem with absentee ballots. We've had absentee ballots in Georgia being mailed in for a long time. No one worried about the stamps back then that people had to do. But I do agree with Janelle. I think if we could get more younger people as poll workers, you can go to your Board of Elections still if you want to walk in and practice social distancing and hand in your ballot there if you want to. So I think that it was interesting that the Secretary of State said he couldn't do anything unless the legislature did something, and then all of a sudden he switched, and I guess it's through the emergency order by the governor. I think it buys a little more time to get the election right on June 9th.
Theron, Georgia perhaps could have played a much bigger role in the Democratic presidential primary. Now with Bernie Sanders dropping out, that's really not the case anymore, is it?
Well, I want to go back to the topic we just discussed. You guys may remember, Lori, that I called for more funding for poll workers, and I tried to change the narrative. And so I'm glad the Secretary of State listened to me on that. But yeah, listen, I'm so glad that now we have a nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. He ran a fantastic primary race, and so now with Senator Sanders deciding to drop out of the race, it gives Democrats an opportunity to regroup and really focus our efforts on winning in November of 2020. Now, as far as Georgia, I still think Georgia is going to play a pivotal role because we are a battleground state. I think that you're going to see a lot of resources and time spent here in Georgia, and so I still think that while the election has been postponed, Georgia is still a pivotal state to 270 electoral votes for Democrats.
Janelle, let me ask you this. Incumbents in the Georgia House and Senate who have challengers are really in a dilemma. State law prohibits them from raising money while in session, and technically they're still in session. So how do they get their messages out with no real way to raise money?
You know what? I honestly was thinking about this really, really deeply. And when it comes down to our incumbents, they have the advantage when it comes to name recognition, as well as to do virtual town halls, which I think is something that they should be pushing. You could do it via conference call or via Zoom or, another outlet. But I think that's where they'll get the upper hand, because even though they're not raising money, it's not like their opponents are out here door knocking and doing direct voter contact. And then it's not like they're raising a lot of money either, because no one's really donating to any political campaigns, especially when a lot of people are unemployed. So I don't think the fundraising piece is going to hit as hard as we are anticipating it to. But I will say that I think the incumbents still have the upper hand for, being able to engage their constituents on just various different platforms, which I think will actually connect them more to their constituents, because you don't have to leave your house to attend these events.
Theron, weigh in there because Georgia House Speaker David Ralston was concerned, about his House members here. You always say he's your good friend, so weigh in. What do you think he's talking about here?
Well, I disagreed with my good friend last week on him saying that he thought that the vote by mail program would help Democrats. But yeah, a few weeks ago when Speaker Ralston led the charge to say, hey, let's look at postponing this election, he cited a lot of different things like public health and we will be ready to really administer an election. But one of the things, Lori, he was doing is that he was thinking about his fellow House and Senate members to say, hey, let's give them enough time to raise money because we have no idea when we're going to sine die from the session. And so I think that the Speaker deserves a lot of credit for his leadership. You saw the entire GOP delegation follow him to encourage Secretary Raffensperger to extend the election. But I do think you're going to have to listen to what Janelle just said. And these legislators, particularly the ones in the rural areas, they're going to have to be very innovative on how they campaign and how they raise funds once the session is over.
All good points. Thanks, guys. Well, coming up, Fulton County's district attorney is CEO of a nonprofit aimed at stopping youth violence, and he's paying himself a salary in addition to the one taxpayers are paying him. This all according to an AJC investigation that we'll discuss coming up.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
An AJC investigation reveals Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard heads up a nonprofit that paid him $140,000 over a 2-year period. This is in addition to his 6-figure salary as district attorney paid for by tax dollars. Oh, and the goal of the nonprofit is to curb youth violence. Theron, then Phil. First, isn't this part of his job, really, Theron, is to curb youth violence? And some of this money, we understand, came from the city of Atlanta in a $125,000 grant.
The one thing that I really want to point out about this, Lori, is that at first glance, you're right. Listen, you think that a district attorney who represents the largest county in Georgia, why would he create this nonprofit organization? Well, the reason he did is that this was, number one, a public process. This was a grant that he received from the city of Atlanta, so this wasn't some private deal. He paid taxes on the money. He disclosed it. He wrote letters to the mayor, the council, the Atlanta police chief, so they all knew that they were asking the district attorney for Fulton County to basically institute a community prosecutors program to reduce youth violence in the city of Atlanta. And 85% of his work was going to primarily focus on the city of Atlanta, and he has so many other cities to worry about. And so he was really expected to deal with every single zone in this particular matter. And then the last thing I want to say about this is that it was a public process. I mean, this was something that was transparent. He disclosed it, but more importantly, this is something that he has actually been very successful at. If you look at the numbers, and I know my good friend Phil knows these numbers, that if you look at the time that Paul Howard has been district attorney in Fulton County, that 62% of youth crime has decreased, and overall we've seen a 63% drop in crime since he's been district attorney. And so it's working. Maybe you guys may question the optics in this particular time, but it was disclosed. He was not trying to hide it. And so ultimately, I think this story was just only coming up because he's up for re-election, and I think he will be re-elected.
Phil?
Well, I have to laugh at that. That's a good try, Theron, to spin it for your buddy Paul Howard, the DA. But this is an outrageous abuse of public office, and I hope it signals now a horse race between the State Attorney General Chris Carr and our federal U.S. Attorney B.J. Pack to investigate immediately. Could this be, and I'm speculating here, could it be a RICO violation involving the skimming of money? Could it be a conspiracy, say, with the former Mayor Reed, who had his city council rubber stamp grants to this so-called nonprofit? Under the law, counties can, yes, supplement the salaries of DAs and judges, but no one has ever heard of this crazy practice. So I think that, again, and as to lowering crime, Paul Howard has had a tough record over the years, criticized by so many people. In fact, he has the lowest in the state of his of doing gang warrants and trying to prosecute gang members. So I think that, again, I appreciate the AJC for, if it's so transparent, how come nobody knew about it until now?
Kathy,
because he's running for election. And then quick correction, youth crime is not down 62%. It's actually violent crime. I want to make that specification.
Kathy, as the former Atlanta City Council president, I want to get your thoughts on this because, as Theron mentioned, the optics do look really bad here.
Well, they are bad, and I think the truth lies somewhere between Theron and Phil, and I'll try to give you my opinion about it. I think from just a disclosure standpoint, unfortunately, he didn't disclose properly. Apparently, he paid his taxes, and that's good, but you have to file as an elected official financial disclosures, and apparently he didn't disclose the secondary occupation or the fact that he had fiduciary responsibility for another organization or that he received those funds. That may have been an oversight, but it's pretty clear stuff that you have to fill out, and he would have known that. Also, as treasurer of his organization, who has to sign off on the tax return, said he didn't know anything about the payments. And so there is some troubling issues with this. I think also just the issue of compensation for people who hold elected office in specialized positions, and even non-specialized positions, is always kind of a tension. But there is an investigation ongoing. We'll find out more about it. And again, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And
we'll be definitely talking about that in the upcoming weeks and months. And Janelle, I want to switch gears. Senator Kelly Loeffler said this week she wants to move on from all of this criticism of her stock portfolio, saying she and her husband will no longer invest in stocks for individual companies. Rather, they'll just move into exchange-traded and mutual funds. Janelle, a spokeswoman for her Republican opponent, Doug Collins, says, this, quote, amounts to a guilty plea. As co-chairwoman of her, honorary co-chairwoman of her campaign, what do you think about this?
Senator Loeffler did what she needed to do in order to just end all of this distraction. That's all it is. But I do want to say something about Congressman Collins, and I pray to God that the campaign does not get upset with me, because I know they want to run a clean campaign. But I am a little upset and a little over the fake outrage that's coming from Congressman Collins, or former Congressman Collins, because when you think about it, he spent his whole career, the end of his career, fighting against, attacking and accusing and actually, when they were attacking the president as it relates to the Ukraine call and all this appearance of wrongdoing and all these other things. And now all of a sudden she's guilty without any type of proof. So, I just feel like right now we have to just move on. But I do need him to just kind of take a chill pill for a quick second and not, turn into the Democrats and start attacking people based off of assumption. But like I said, she knew that this was going to just continue to come on up. And what's more important to Senator Loeffler is the state of Georgia, the people, what's happening right now, the crisis that we're in. And I think she just wants to stay focused on that.
A chill pill in politics. Good luck with that one, huh? Coming up, we'll have winners and losers. Stay tuned, everyone.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
First, I want to start off by recognizing the U.S. Census is underway, and congratulations to Heard, Fayette, Forsyth, Houston, and Columbia counties for being the first ones to reach the 50% threshold for the census response rates. Despite the pandemic, the U.S. Census is ongoing. If you know of anyone who lives in Southwest Georgia, please tell them to fill out their forms, because that's where we're lagging. And Theron and I are co-chairs of the marketing committee. So Theron, we'll turn it over to you.
Well, my first winner is going to be Tyler Perry. I know you guys saw the stories this week of him paying for groceries, I think at 44 locations, Kroger locations in the Atlanta area. And also want to make the winners the people who are on the front lines at the grocery store, stocking the groceries, risking their lives, and helping us buy food to feed our families. My next winner is going to be a personal friend in Athens, Georgia, David Dwight Jones, also known as Dr. Love. He was at the Clark County Athletic Department for a very long time, particularly at Clark Central High School. He was there for multiple generations and played a tremendous impact on a lot of us as young people with the football and basketball program. And then my last winner is going to be Mayor Rusty Paul, who said that people on Interstate 400 need to stop driving like it's a NASCAR race. And so I'm encouraging everyone to slow down during this tough time.
Phil, I'm being rushed a little bit here. I'm getting the 2-minute warning. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to make as my winner one of the giants of the state legislature that passed away this past Monday, sadly, Senator Jack Hill, who was the head of the Senate Budget Writing Committee. He was a great Southern gentleman, got great institutional memory. It's a real blow. And of course, the Masters tournament has been tentatively rescheduled over in Augusta in second week of November. That's going to be good and a good economic impact for us, too.
Our hearts and prayers are with Senator Jack Hill's family for sure. Janelle.
Yeah, so my winner is the Georgia National Guard. They got recognition from the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, recently for the work that they're doing here. So kudos to them. And then Theron took my other winner, which was also my mayor, Mayor Rusty Paul, for the same reason. And then I made my loser all those people that are NASCAR racing on 400 and 285. Let's slow down and just get through this moment.
He's my mayor too, so thank you. All right, and Kathy, I have less than 30 seconds.
General Tom Cardin, who's the Georgia National Guard general who's in charge of the hospital expansions and overseeing the 3,000 troops that are here that were just mentioned. I think, leadership matters, and he's doing a great job of helping us prepare for the peak on April 23rd.
Okay.
I also want to just note that singer John Prine passed this week, and we're going to miss his wonderful music.
All right. Thank you both. Thank you all so much. And continued best wishes and best health to all of you. We'll hopefully see you again soon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you again next week. And again, happy Easter, everyone.